Buffett's humble demeanor and genuine smile remained constants even as he rose to become one of the world's richest individuals. Warren Edward Buffett's journey from a precocious boy in Omaha, Nebraska to a global icon of investing is a story of passion, patience, and principle. Born in 1930, Buffett grew up during the Great Depression, yet displayed an uncanny aptitude for business and numbers from an early age. Over the decades, he transformed a struggling textile company into the multinational conglomerate Berkshire Hathaway and amassed a fortune that consistently ranks him among the wealthiest people on the planet. But beyond the balance sheets and billion-dollar deals lies a man who measures success in life by more than money. One who values integrity, simple joys, and the well-being of others. This comprehensive account narrates Warren Buffett's life story in a storytelling style, from his early childhood ventures and first businesses, through his education and mentorship under Benjamin Graham, the building of Berkshire Hathaway, his key investment decisions, personal milestones, and finally his extraordinary philanthropic journey. Along the way, we'll highlight Buffett's core wisdom and life philosophy, the famous lessons on investing, money, and happiness that have earned him the nickname Oracle of Omaha. Join us as we delve into the remarkable life of Warren Buffett, a biography told with inspiration and rich storytelling, much like a long-form documentary. Warren Buffett was born on August 30th, 1930, in Omaha, Nebraska. He was the second of three children and the only son of Howard and Leila Buffett. Warren's father, Howard, was a stockbroker and later a U.S. congressman, and from a young age, Warren was exposed to the world of finance. In fact, the boy's interest in money and business sprouted almost as soon as he could count. Family lore tells of Warren at around 6 years old buying packs of chewing gum and selling them stick by stick to neighbors for profit. By age 7, he had devoured a library book called 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000, which fired up his entrepreneurial imagination. This early spark launched a childhood filled with small business ventures and learning experiences. Young Buffett tried just about any way to make a buck. He sold packs of Coca-Cola and weekly magazines door to door and earned pocket money working in his grandfather's grocery store. By the time he was a preteen, he had expanded to selling used golf balls and collectible stamps, and he even started a small horse racing tip sheet business for local bettors. In 1944, at age 13, he filed his first income tax return, claiming a $35 deduction for the depreciation of his bicycle and watch, tools of his paper delivery route. The sight of that tax return, with a teenager diligently accounting for expenses, offers an early glimpse of Buffett's lifelong attention to the numbers. Perhaps the most famous of Buffett's childhood enterprises came in 1945 when, as a high school sophomore, he and a friend invested $25 to buy a second-hand pinball machine. They installed it in a local barber shop. Within months, the profits from that lone machine allowed them to buy more until they had a small fleet of pinball machines in 3 different barbershops around Omaha. The venture was a hit. Customers loved playing a quick game while waiting for a haircut, and quarters rolled in. After about a year, Warren and his partner sold the pinball business to a war veteran for $1,200, a hefty sum in the 1940s and a 48-fold return on their initial investment. Stories like these of young Buffett hustling and thinking creatively have become legendary, painting the portrait of a born businessman who was enlivened by every entrepreneurial venture he could try. Even as he was running small businesses, Buffett developed a fascination with the stock market. As a boy, he would spend hours in the customer's lounge of a local brokerage firm, listening to the stock ticker and soaking up market chatter. At 11 years old, he took his first plunge into investing. He bought 3 shares of Cities Service preferred stock for himself and 3 for his older sister, Doris. The price per share was around $38. Shortly after, it dropped to about $27, testing the young investor's resolve. Warren held on until it ticked back up to $40 and then sold, netting a small profit. No sooner had he sold than the stock surged to over $200. It was a lesson in patience that he never forgot. Buffett often cites this episode to illustrate one of his core principles. Don't be eager to grab a small gain and miss the big win. Decades later, he would quip that the stock taught him the value of patience, and that snacking on small profits can leave a lot of money on the table, a lesson he clearly took to heart in his long-term investing style. By the time Buffett finished high school, his myriad ventures had made him a substantial sum for a teenager. He had saved $5,000 by age 16 and $9,800 by age 20 in the late 1940s, equivalent to well over $100,000 today. This impressive bankroll, earned through grit and ingenuity, made him seriously consider bypassing college to go straight into business full time. In fact, young Warren felt he already had a head start in the real world. After all, he'd been making deals and studying stocks while his peers mowed lawns or babysat. However, Howard Buffett insisted his son get a college education, ultimately shaping the next chapter of Warren's life. Buffett heeded his father's advice and pursued higher education, but he did it his way. In 1947, at just 16, he enrolled at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, one of the world's top business schools. He was by far one of the youngest students in his class. Warren found some courses useful but believed his own practical experience often outpaced what professors were teaching. After 2 years at Wharton, he decided to transfer and finish closer to home. He moved to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and, despite working full-time on side ventures, managed to graduate with his bachelor's degree in business administration by age 20. His razor-sharp mathematical mind helped. Classmates recall him mentally calculating compound interest or probabilities faster than you could punch numbers into a calculator. In 1950, Buffett set his sights on Harvard Business School. He applied, confidently by all accounts, and was rejected. In a humorous retelling, Warren often notes that the Harvard rejection letter was one of the best things that ever happened to him. Disappointed but undeterred, he discovered that his personal hero, the legendary investor Benjamin Graham, was a professor at Columbia University's business school. This was a game-changing revelation. Graham was famous as the father of value investing and the author of The Intelligent Investor, a book Buffett had practically memorized as a teen. Warren quickly applied to Columbia, writing a letter essentially saying, "I'm coming to study under Ben Graham, whether you accept me or not." Columbia did accept him, and so Buffett moved to New York to pursue a master's in economics under Graham and fellow finance scholar David Dodd. At Columbia Business School, Buffett was like a kid in a candy store. He took every class Graham offered and pored over the principles of value investing, buying stocks that trade for less than their intrinsic business value that Graham preached. Graham's core concept was the idea of a margin of safety, and investors should only buy a stock when it is priced well below its conservative valuation, leaving room for error and unforeseen bad news. Warren absorbed these lessons hungrily. Years later, he would summarize Graham's teachings with a clarity and reverence that shows how deeply they sank in. The basic ideas of investing are to look at stocks as businesses, use market fluctuations to your advantage, and seek a margin of safety. That's what Ben Graham taught us. 100 years from now, they will still be the cornerstones of investing. This quote from Buffett himself underscores how formative Graham's influence was. Indeed, Buffett often credits Graham's book The Intelligent Investor as the intellectual bedrock for his career. Benjamin Graham in 1950, the famed investor and author who became Buffett's mentor at Columbia. Graham's value investing philosophy deeply shaped the young Buffett's approach to stocks. In addition to investing wisdom, Graham gave Buffett something equally valuable: personal attention and belief. Warren was the only student ever to earn an A+ in Graham's class, and the two formed a bond. The young Nebraskan with an uncanny mind for numbers had impressed the old Wall Street guru. In fact, Buffett offered to work for Graham's investment firm for free after graduation, so eager was he to continue learning from his mentor. Graham initially declined the offer. He was known to be a bit stiff and hesitant to hire non-family, so a disappointed Buffett headed back to Omaha in 1951. But, as we shall see, this mentor-mentido's story wasn't over just yet. While Benjamin Graham was Buffett's significant intellectual mentor, a few other influences deserve mention. Warren's father, Howard, apart from pushing him to get an education, instilled in him a strong sense of ethics and an interest in politics. Howard Buffett was a principled man with libertarian leanings. Warren was also an avid reader of investor Philip Fisher, who emphasized buying quality businesses for the long term, a perspective that would later complement Graham's focus on cheap stocks. And then there's Charlie Munger. Although Buffett wouldn't meet Munger until 1959, the two shared Omaha roots and a strikingly similar worldview. Munger would eventually become Buffett's business partner and close friend, breaking Buffett of his cigar butt habits, as Buffett fondly says. More on that soon. By 1951, Warren Buffett had earned his master's degree from Columbia at age 21. He had a head full of value investing principles, a list of childhood business successes under his belt, and an unstoppable drive to make a mark in the investment world. What he needed now was real-world experience and perhaps a bit of luck to turn theory into practice. Little did he know that a Saturday train ride to Washington, D.C. that year would provide just that. Fresh out of Columbia, Buffett was keen to start his career on Wall Street, but both his father and Ben Graham urged him not to rush into the New York finance scene. Taking their advice, Buffett returned to Omaha in 1951 and joined his father's brokerage firm, Falk & Co., as an investment salesman. At 21, he was essentially working as a stockbroker, advising clients and selling stocks. Not exactly his dream job, but it gave him first-hand experience dealing with real investors' emotions and reactions to the market. In the evenings, to conquer a lifelong fear of public speaking, believe it or not, Buffett once had stage fright, he enrolled in a Dale Carnegie public speaking course. The course paid off tremendously. Armed with newfound confidence, young Warren went on to teach a night class at the University of Omaha called Investment Principles. Imagine being a middle-aged Omaha resident in 1952, walking into an investing class and finding a 21-year-old Buffett teaching you about stocks. It happened, and Buffett's students, some twice his age, reported that he was a natural teacher. Buffett's early 20s were a whirlwind of activity. He even tried his hand at a side business by purchasing a Sinclair gas station in Omaha, hoping to improve its profits. That venture was a rare flop. The gas station didn't perform well and eventually closed, giving Warren a taste of failure. He learned that not every business makes money, even if you're smart. The setback barely slowed him down. The Geico door-knocking story. One pivotal moment came one winter day in 1951. Buffett had learned that Geico Insurance, then a little-known auto insurer, had Benjamin Graham on its board of directors. Intrigued by the company and likely hoping to find an excuse to connect with Graham, Warren took a train to Washington, D.C. and headed straight to Geico's headquarters on a Saturday morning. The building was closed, but Buffett famously banged on the door until a janitor let him in. Inside, the only person he found was an executive named Lorimer Davidson, who graciously spent hours explaining Geico's business to this curious college grad. Davidson essentially gave Buffett a masterclass on insurance and how Geico had a cost advantage by selling policies directly to customers, cutting out agents. Buffett was enthralled. He left that meeting and promptly put more than half his savings into Geico stock. This bold move proved brilliant. Geico would go on to grow spectacularly, and many years later, Buffett's company would acquire Geico outright. More importantly, Buffett earned a lifelong friend and mentor in Lorimer Davidson, who later recalled being amazed that such a young man was an extraordinary mind after just a few minutes of conversation. This Geico story is often told as the moment Buffett found his investing footing. He combined shoe leather research, networking with the right people, and conviction in a good idea to make a successful investment. By 1954, a wonderful turn of events happened. Benjamin Graham, who had kept in touch with his star student, offered Buffett a job at his investment firm, Graham Newman Corp. Buffett jumped at the opportunity. He moved back to New York to become a securities analyst under Graham, earning a salary of $12,000 a year, about $140,000 in today's dollars. In the Graham Newman office, Buffett honed his craft by analyzing dozens of potential undervalued stocks. The classic cigar butt picks, cheap stocks that the market had discarded, but which had a few puffs of value left, as Graham liked to describe. He also worked closely with another investing luminary, Walter Schloss, who was part of Graham's circle. Those 2 years working for his mentor were like a finishing school for Buffett's investment philosophy. Graham was a strict teacher. He insisted on cold, hard numbers and buying with a big margin of safety, allowing no room for speculative fluff. Buffett later acknowledged that Graham's approach worked brilliantly, but also that it had limits when managing larger sums of money or when he found truly outstanding businesses. In fact, Warren made one particularly great investment while at Graham Newman. He noticed the fast-growing quality of a young company called American Express during the infamous 1963 salad oil scandal and began buying its stock cheaply, a hint of his later style of buying wonderful companies in crisis. Graham, ever the pure value guy, might not have approved initially, but that Amex investment turned into a big winner, and Buffett's partnerships would buy even more of it later in the 60s. In 1956, Benjamin Graham decided to retire and close down his partnership, essentially ending Graham Newman. This meant Buffett's job in New York was coming to an end. But by that time, Warren had amassed personal savings of around $174,000, equivalent to over $2 million now. An astonishing amount for a 25-year-old, but a result of his relentless investing success and high personal savings rate. Graham's parting gift to his pupil was less tangible than money. It was the confidence and knowledge to strike out on his own. Buffett, now married, he had wed Susan Thompson in 1952, more on that in a later section, and with a young family, decided to move back to Omaha for good. At age 26, armed with Graham's teachings and his own growing reputation among family and friends, Warren Buffett started his own investment partnership in 1956. This was the beginning of what would eventually become the foundation of his empire. He created Buffett Partnership Limited and a few parallel partnerships with a handful of investors, some relatives, some close colleagues, who entrusted him with their money. The terms were simple. Buffett would invest the funds, aiming to beat the market. He would take a cut of the profits, typically 25% of any gains above a 4% hurdle rate, but crucially, he would cover any losses beyond that first 4%. This aligned his incentives with his investors impeccably. If the partnership didn't make money, Buffett didn't make money. They liked that. He started with around $105,000 from his family and associates. Warren operated these partnerships out of his home, devouring annual reports at his dining table and quietly making investments through a local brokerage. There was no fanfare, but the results would soon speak volumes. Over the next few years, Buffett's partnerships multiplied, both in number and in assets. By 1957, he was running 3 partnerships. By 1959, 6 partnerships. He would later merge them all under the Buffett Partnership Limited umbrella. During this time, an important personal connection was made. In 1959, at a dinner in Omaha, Buffett was introduced to Charlie Munger, a man who would become inseparable from Buffett's business life. Munger was a local attorney with a sharp investing mind, and the two hit it off immediately. They shared a similar dry humor, Midwestern straightforwardness, and love of intellectual sparring. This meeting was the start of one of the greatest partnerships in business history. Though Charlie at first kept his own investment partnership separate, by the late 1970s, he would join Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway. Munger's influence on Buffett was profound. He encouraged Warren to evolve beyond the strict cigar butt approach of Graham and to pay up for great businesses. As Buffett put it, "It took Charlie Munger to break my cigar butt habits and set the course for building a business that could combine huge size with satisfactory profits." In other words, Munger steered Buffett toward buying wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices. That phrase has since become a Buffett maxim. One early coup for Buffett Partnership was its investment in the Sanborn Map Company. In 1960-61, Buffett noticed Sanborn Map, which made detailed maps for insurance companies, was absurdly undervalued. The stock price implied the core map business was worth less than zero, because Sanborn held a portfolio of securities whose value per share exceeded Sanborn's total share price. Sensing a classic value play, Buffett quietly amassed around 23% of Sanborn's outstanding shares, and then launched a polite but firm activist campaign. He joined the board, and allied with other shareholders to pressure management. The end result? Sanborn Map agreed to repurchase shares from shareholders at fair value using its securities portfolio. Buffett and his partners got a windfall, a 50% gain on their investment in just 2 years. More importantly, it demonstrated Buffett's willingness to take control of a company to unlock value, presaging many such moves he'd make later. This won him admiration in the local financial community and grew the funds under his management. By 1962, just 6 years after starting from scratch, Warren Buffett was a millionaire in his own right. His partnerships had compounded money at a ferocious rate, often averaging around 30% annual returns, far outpacing the Dow Jones Index. At the start of 1962, the combined capital of Buffett's partnerships was $7.2 million, of which Buffett's personal stake was over $1 million. Now running a sizable pool of money, Buffett made a decision that would define the rest of his career. He set his sights on a New England textile manufacturing firm called Berkshire Hathaway. In 1962, Buffett began buying shares of Berkshire Hathaway, a struggling textile mill company based in Massachusetts. Why would a young Omaha investor obsessed with value want a part of an ailing textile business? The answer lay in the numbers. Berkshire's stock was trading at around $7.50 per share, yet the company had working capital, cash, inventory, etc., of about $19 per share. In simple terms, Berkshire was worth more dead than alive. The mills were barely profitable, but the company's assets in cash and investments made the stock a bargain. Buffett saw an opportunity to profit if the company either improved or liquidated at fair value. He started buying, and by 1963 was aggressively accumulating shares, eventually becoming Berkshire's largest outside shareholder. Berkshire's CEO at the time, Seabury Stanton, took notice of this young investor buying up stock. Stanton and Buffett actually negotiated. At one point, Stanton agreed to buy back Buffett's shares for $11.50 each, which would have given Buffett a nice profit. Buffett agreed verbally, but when the paperwork arrived, the offer was slightly lower, around $11.75. Whether it was a misunderstanding or a slight, Buffett felt Stanton was trying to nick him for 12 cents a share. In characteristic fashion, instead of getting mad, Buffett got even. He called off the deal and decided to continue buying stock until he could take control of the company, which he did. In May 1965, at a Berkshire Hathaway board meeting, Warren Buffett, then 34 years old, ousted Seabury Stanton and effectively took over the company. He installed a new president to run the textile operations, but from that point on, Buffett was calling the shots as the majority owner and chairman-in-waiting of Berkshire Hathaway. It's important to note that at this time, Berkshire was still a textile manufacturer, and Buffett had no intention initially of closing that business. He wasn't a corporate raider looking to strip it for parts. He genuinely tried to turn it around. However, the textile industry in New England was declining inexorably due to competition and cheaper production elsewhere. Berkshire's textile mills kept losing ground. For a few years, Buffett kept them running, perhaps out of loyalty to the workers and the tradition, but he later acknowledged that was a mistake. In retrospect, he famously called Berkshire Hathaway the dumbest stock he ever bought, not because of the price, but because he stuck with the textile business for too long. He would quip that if he'd invested that money in insurance companies or other ventures instead, it would have made far more. Nonetheless, this mistake became the platform for something much greater. With Berkshire Hathaway as his new vehicle, Buffett pivoted the company's direction from textiles to insurance and investments. In 1967, Berkshire made its first major insurance acquisition, buying National Indemnity Company, an Omaha-based insurer, which immediately provided a steady flow of insurance premiums, or float, that could be invested elsewhere. This was a crucial strategic shift. Insurance would prove to be the engine of Berkshire's growth, giving Buffett capital from premiums to invest at will. Over the coming decades, Berkshire Hathaway would evolve into a diversified holding company, owning a mix of wholly owned businesses and large stock positions, all guided by Buffett's value investing principles. Buffett's partnership was still operating in the 1960s alongside Berkshire, but by the end of the decade, he decided to wind the partnerships down. The late 1960s saw a frenzy in the stock market with speculative mania, the go-go years, and Buffett famously wrote to his partners in 1969 that he could not find sensible investments and was shutting the partnership before things got crazy. In 1969, he liquidated the Buffett Partnership Limited, distributing to his partners their proportional shares of investments, which included a lot of Berkshire Hathaway stock. Many of those partners happily held on to their Berkshire shares for the long term, to their great benefit. Meanwhile, Buffett was now 100% focused on Berkshire Hathaway as the main vehicle for his investments and business empire. It was around this time, 1970, that Warren Buffett assumed the official title of Chairman and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, a position he still holds over half a century later. He began writing Berkshire's annual shareholder letters, which over the years have become must-read classics of business literature for their wisdom and wit. In 1978, he brought Charlie Munger on board as vice chairman of Berkshire, cementing their partnership. The duo would apply a two-pronged approach. Buffett handled most investing and capital allocation, and Munger served as an indispensable right-hand man, challenging ideas and encouraging moves into high-quality businesses. Once Berkshire's textile operations were clearly failing, Buffett finally closed the last mill in 1985. Buffett deployed Berkshire's growing capital into other ventures. Some of Berkshire Hathaway's most iconic investments and acquisitions began in the 1970s and 1980s, and each has a story. See's Candies, 1972. This West Coast chocolate maker was a small, family-owned company with a devoted customer base. Buffett and Munger acquired See's for $25 million, even though it had no hard assets to speak of. What it did have was a beloved brand and the ability to raise prices a bit each year without losing customers. See's became a revelation for Buffett. It taught him how a wonderful business could compound wealth by generating rich cash flow with minimal incremental investment. The success of See's, it paid back the purchase price many times over in profits, helped shift Buffett's mindset firmly towards buying great companies, not just cheap stocks. Charlie Munger's influence here was key. As Buffett joked, if we hadn't bought See's, we might never have bought Coca-Cola. The Washington Post, 1973, during a severe bear market, Buffett scooped up an ownership stake, about 10% in the Washington Post company, recognizing that the publisher was trading far below its true value. He became close friends with Katharine Graham, the Post's publisher, and even joined the company's board. This investment, for around $10 million, grew to be worth over $1 billion in time. Buffett's reputation as a savvy capital allocator grew on Wall Street as people noticed moves like this. Geico, 1976 and 1980s. Remember Geico, the company Buffett visited as a young man? In 1976, Geico hit a rough patch, teetering near bankruptcy due to mispricing insurance policies. Buffett knew the business well and had faith in its fundamentals. He started buying Geico stock massively while it was beaten down. His early mentor, Lorimer Davidson, had become CEO of Geico in the interim, and the company righted the ship. Buffett's investment paid off spectacularly as Geico recovered. By the early 1990s, Berkshire would acquire the remainder of Geico, making it a wholly owned subsidiary, one of the crown jewels of Berkshire's insurance operations. American Express, 1960s and beyond. Buffett's partnerships initially bought American Express after the 1963 scandal, where a subsidiary's fraud caused a panic. He invested roughly $13 million then, a huge bet that paid off as Amex regained trust. Through Berkshire, Buffett continued to hold and add to American Express over the years. It exemplified his rule to be greedy when others are fearful, buying a great franchise when short-term fears drove others away. Salomon Brothers, 1987. In the late 80s, Berkshire became the largest shareholder of Salomon Inc., a Wall Street investment bank with a 12% stake. Buffett even joined the board. This turned into an unexpected drama. In 1991, Salomon was engulfed in a scandal when a rogue bond trader violated U.S. Treasury auction rules, and the firm's executives failed to report it promptly. The crisis threatened Salomon's survival. Buffett stepped in as interim chairman to restore integrity and confidence, calming regulators and markets. At a famous congressional hearing, Buffett testified, "Lose money for the firm and I will be understanding. Lose a shred of reputation and I will be ruthless." That ethos helped save Salomon. Buffett steered the firm until the crisis passed, then gladly returned to Omaha, vowing he'd had his fill of Wall Street drama. This episode cemented Buffett's image as not just a great investor, but a financial statesman with unassailable credibility. Coca-Cola, 1988, one of Buffett's most celebrated investments. Berkshire started buying the Coca-Cola Company stock in 1988. Buffett loved the business, its global brand, addictive product, and steady growth, and he was also fond of Cherry Coke himself. Berkshire ultimately acquired up to 7% of Coca-Cola for about $1.22 billion. It became one of Berkshire's largest and longest-held stock investments, growing manyfold in value. "You can't go wrong with products you personally love," he joked. Coca-Cola's success underscored Buffett's shift to buying and holding great companies for the long term, even if he paid a fair, not bargain basement price. In fact, Buffett's quote, "It's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price," was very much validated by the Coca-Cola experience. By the late 1980s, Berkshire Hathaway had evolved into a financial powerhouse. It owned insurers, National Indemnity, GEICO, etc., had major stock holdings in companies like Coca-Cola, American Express, Washington Post, and held wholly owned businesses like See's Candies, Nebraska Furniture Mart, acquired in 1983 from another of Buffett's idols, Rose Blumkin, and Buffalo News, a newspaper in Buffalo acquired in 1977. Berkshire's stock price reflected this success. Famously, its Class A shares became the highest priced stock on the New York Stock Exchange, eventually reaching tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of dollars per share as it never split. In 1990, Warren Buffett joined the ranks of billionaires, not through a tech startup or inheritance, but purely by compounding investments over decades. Through the 1990s and 2000s, Buffett kept on investing with the same principles. He avoided the dot-com frenzy of the late 90s, warning that many internet startups lacked true business value, a stance that seemed overly cautious in 1999 but proved wise after the 2000 crash. In the 2000s, he made some of his largest acquisitions. General Re, a huge reinsurance company, bought in 1998, Mid-American Energy, a utility company, now Berkshire Energy, in 2000, and in 2009 to 2010, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, Buffett's biggest buy ever, for about $26 billion, reflecting his confidence in America's future. He also provided lifelines to companies during the 2008 financial crisis. For example, investing $5 billion in Goldman Sachs on favorable terms at the height of panic, sending a strong signal of confidence. His 2008 New York Times op-ed titled "Buy American, I Am" encapsulated his belief in long-term optimism amid short-term fear. All the while, Buffett remained in Omaha, living a remarkably unchanged life. He drove his own car, no chauffeur, stopped at McDonald's for breakfast on the way to the office, adjusting whether he got a $2.61 or $3.07 meal based on the market's mood, he once joked, and spent his days in the same modest office reading annual reports. He famously eschewed high-tech investments for a long time, admitting he didn't invest in what I don't understand. He made an exception in 2016 by buying Apple stock, which by 2025 became one of Berkshire's largest holdings. Perhaps a nod that even the Oracle of Omaha can adapt with the times. By 2025, Warren Buffett, now well into his 90s, remains the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway and still enjoys the game of investing as much as ever. Berkshire is a colossal conglomerate valued at over $700 billion, owning everything from insurance, energy, and railroads to consumer brands and big slices of corporate America. The annual shareholders meeting in Omaha draws tens of thousands of admirers from around the globe, lovingly dubbed the Woodstock for capitalists, a testament to Buffett's almost cult-like status among investors. Beyond the boardroom and balance sheets, Warren Buffett's personal life has been marked by devotion to family, enduring friendships, and an unpretentious lifestyle that seems at odds with his vast wealth. In 1952, at 21, Warren married Susan Thompson. Susie, as she was called, was a spirited, compassionate woman who became the love of Warren's life. They married in a small church ceremony and soon started a family. Their first child, Susan Alice Buffett, was born in 1953, followed by a son, Howard Graham Buffett, in 1954. Note the middle name honoring Benjamin Graham, and another son, Peter Buffett, in 1958. Warren adored his children, but building his young career meant he wasn't always around as much as he liked in those early years. Susan, an independent and socially conscious person, was understanding, but also increasingly drawn to her own pursuits. In 1977, after 25 years of marriage, Warren and Susie made a highly unconventional decision. Susan moved to San Francisco to pursue a singing career, and the couple began living separately. However, they remained very close and legally married, talking frequently on the phone, vacationing as a family, and supporting each other's endeavors. This separation was not born of acrimony, but of evolving life paths. Before she left Omaha, Susie worried that Warren, a famously helpless person in day-to-day tasks like cooking, would be lonely, so she arranged for a young woman she knew, Astrid Menks, to look after him. What developed was a remarkably amicable extended family arrangement. Astrid became Warren's companion in Omaha with Susan's blessing, and all three maintained a friendship. They even sent out Christmas cards signed Warren, Susie, and Astrid to friends, a fact that bemused many, but insiders knew it reflected the genuine care and trust among them. Warren later said he had been incredibly lucky to have two such wonderful women in his life. Susan Buffett remained a guiding influence on Warren. She grew into a philanthropist and advocate, encouraging Warren to broaden his perspectives on social issues and charity. Her warmth balanced Warren's occasional introversion. Tragically, in 2004, Susan Buffett passed away from a stroke, which was a devastating blow to Warren. 2 years later, on his 76th birthday in 2006, Warren married Astrid Menks in a modest ceremony. Astrid had been by his side for decades at that point, and their marriage was a quiet affirmation of a bond long established. Buffett's children, now grown, each forged their own paths: education, philanthropy, farming, music, supported by their parents' guidance, but notably not by trust fund riches. Warren has made it clear that while his kids would be comfortable, they would not inherit great wealth. He often repeated, "I want to give my kids just enough so that they can do anything, but not enough that they can do nothing." Indeed, each child received a foundation to run, but Buffett intends most of his fortune to go to charity, not his heirs. One of the most endearing aspects of Warren Buffett's story is how little his day-to-day life changed, even as he became a multi-billionaire. In 1958, he bought a cozy gray stucco house in a quiet Omaha neighborhood for $31,500. As of 2025, he still lives in that very same house. No mansions or yachts for him. He jokes that he has everything he needs right there. "I'd move if I thought I'd be happier someplace else," he told an interviewer, "but I'm perfectly content. I couldn't imagine a better house." He also kept driving himself around Omaha in a series of relatively modest cars, often buying them slightly used. He once auctioned his old Lincoln Town car for charity, and for years drove a Cadillac with hail dents because it still ran just fine. When asked why he doesn't indulge more, Buffett said if there was something that would make him happier, he'd buy it this afternoon, but he simply has simple tastes. Buffett's daily routine is famously ordinary. He's known to start most mornings with a stop at McDonald's with exact change in hand, choosing one of a few breakfast combos depending on how prosperous or lean he feels that day, a playful superstition. He enjoys drinking several cans of Coca-Cola. Cherry Coke is his preferred flavor throughout the day, claiming he's 1/4 Coca-Cola, given his lifelong consumption of it. Perhaps a sweet irony that he became a major shareholder of the company. In the office, Buffett spends 80% of his time reading. He has said the key to knowledge is to go to bed smarter than you woke up, and he plows through newspapers, financial reports, and books constantly. Despite the empire he oversees, Berkshire's headquarters in Omaha has a staff of only about 25 people. There's no sprawling corporate campus, just a simple suite where Buffett and his longtime assistant handle correspondence and investment decisions. He operates largely by trusting the managers of Berkshire's many subsidiaries. He handpicks honest and capable people and lets them run their businesses with minimal interference, a style that has won fierce loyalty. Buffett's personality is a blend of Midwestern folksiness, razor-sharp intellect, and a dash of showmanship. He is humble and courteous, known to remember people's names and send thank you notes handwritten. At shareholder meetings, he might strum on his ukulele. Yes, he learned to play the ukulele, even performing duets with folks like Bon Jovi for fun, or crack self-deprecating jokes. His sense of humor and use of homespun analogies, whether talking about economic moats or fat pitch investing, make complex financial ideas accessible. This everyman charm is one reason the world has come to love him. Among his close friends is Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft. The two met in 1991, hit it off playing bridge, Buffett's favorite card game, and forged a deep friendship. It was a surprise to many because at the time, Buffett avoided tech stocks, and Gates was the king of tech, but they bonded over intellectual curiosity and philanthropy. Gates has said one of the biggest lessons he learned from Buffett is the value of focus and saying no to things that don't matter. That time is the most precious resource. The duo would later partner on global philanthropy in a very big way. Warren Buffett often says he is one of the luckiest humans to ever live, and that with great wealth comes the responsibility to give back. For years, Buffett wasn't known as a major philanthropist. He was busy compounding money and somewhat believed that he or his wife would give it all away eventually, likely after his death. Susan Buffett, before her passing, had already started the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, focusing on education and women's rights, and Warren figured she'd deploy a lot of the money. But Susan's death in 2004 was a turning point that led Buffett to formulate a direct plan for his own philanthropy. In June 2006, at age 75, Warren made headlines with an announcement that was stunning in scope. He pledged to give away the bulk of his fortune to philanthropic foundations, starting immediately. Specifically, he planned to donate about 10 million Berkshire Hathaway Class B shares to charity over time, worth around $30 to $37 billion at that time, the largest charitable donation in history. The biggest beneficiary would be the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, run by his friends Bill and Melinda Gates, which focuses on global health, education, and poverty. In fact, Buffett joined the Gates Foundation's board as a trustee and committed to giving them about 5% of his remaining Berkshire shares each year, with the condition that the foundation spends the money promptly to make an impact. He also allocated significant shares to foundations run by each of his 3 children, encouraging them to cultivate their own charitable missions, and to the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation in honor of his late wife. Buffett's philanthropic pledge was rooted in his belief that enormous sums of money have little utility for him personally beyond a certain point and can do great good in the world. He famously said that leaving billions to his kids would be a mistake for their well-being and that society needed those resources more. At the time of the 2006 pledge, Buffett was worth about $40+ billion. He pledged to give away 85% of his Berkshire stock gradually. Later, he would up that to 99% of his wealth to be given to philanthropic causes. And he started doing it. Every summer, he writes giant checks, or rather transfers big blocks of Berkshire shares to the Gates Foundation and the other charities. In 2010, Buffett and Bill Gates launched a movement to encourage other billionaires to accelerate their giving. They called it the Giving Pledge, a campaign through which the world's wealthiest individuals commit to give away at least half of their wealth to charity, either during their lifetime or in their will. Buffett's own pledge was far more. He said he'll leave virtually nothing to be taxed at death, as it will have been given to worthy causes. The Giving Pledge began with signatures from 40 U.S. billionaires in 2010, and by 2025, it has hundreds of signatories globally. It's not a legal contract, but a moral commitment, and Buffett, as its elder statesman, has been its cheerleader. He often hosts dinners with Gates to discuss philanthropy with other business leaders, sharing ideas on how to give effectively. Buffett's charitable focus has been broadly aligned with the Gates Foundation's priorities, figuring that Bill and Melinda Gates have the infrastructure to put the funds to the best use possible in areas like eradicating diseases, improving education, and alleviating poverty. He has a deep trust in their capabilities. Additionally, through his own foundation and his children's foundations, Buffett's wealth has supported scholarships, nuclear threat reduction. He donated $50 million to the Nuclear Threat Initiative to reduce global dangers and other causes close to his family's heart. One charming annual tradition born in 2000 is Buffett's charity lunch auction. Every year, he offers up a chance for someone to have a private lunch with him at Smith and Wollensky Steakhouse in New York and pick his brain on any topic. This auction has raised money for the Glide Foundation, a San Francisco charity that helps the homeless. Um, Bidders have paid astronomical amounts for this privilege. In one record-setting year, the winning bid was over $3.4 million. Buffett jokes that for that price, the winner can choose the restaurant and order a double dessert. But all kidding aside, he's proud that something as simple as sharing his time can funnel so much to a good cause. Through 2024, these lunches have raised over $34 million cumulatively for Glide. Despite giving away tens of billions, an interesting twist is that Buffett's net worth continued to climb for much of this period, thanks to Berkshire's compounding. For instance, he donated $2 to $3 billion worth of stock annually, but the remaining shares kept growing in value. So even after immense gifts, he's still among the top 5 or 10 richest people in the world. It's a reflection of how powerful compounding can be, something Buffett often marvels at. When asked about philanthropy, Buffett often emphasizes effective altruism. He wants the money to be used well, not just given for the sake of it. That's why he's backing people like the Gateses, who deploy capital efficiently in targeted projects. He also notes that society enabled someone like him to prosper, so it's only right to reinvest that prosperity back into society's future. In June 2021, Buffett stepped down as a trustee of the Gates Foundation amid some organizational changes there, but that hasn't changed his pledge or annual gifts. He remarked that he was inactive on the board anyway. His main role was writing checks and offering advice when asked. His life's work in philanthropy is really just beginning when you think about the impact that the funds he's given will have over the coming decades. Buffett's legacy now extends far beyond investing. He is also seen as a model for giving back. In one of his pledge letters, he wrote, "Were we to use more than 1% of my claim check's wealth on ourselves, neither our happiness nor our well-being would be enhanced. In contrast, that remaining 99% can have a huge effect on the health and welfare of others." He's made it his mission to ensure that effect is realized. Warren Buffett's success is not just in the dollars and cents, but in the timeless wisdom he has distilled and shared with the world. Through his speeches, writings, and interviews, Buffett has become as much a sage as an investor. His philosophy on investing, business, and life is admired globally. As we conclude Buffett's story, let's highlight some of his core principles and famous lessons, the guiding lights that emerge from his journey. Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule no 1. This tongue-in-cheek saying is perhaps Buffett's most quoted adage. It underscores the importance of capital preservation and prudent risk management. Buffett isn't saying one can avoid all losses. He himself had losing investments, but that your mindset should be fiercely defensive. Don't engage in investments where you have a high chance of permanent loss. Protect your downside, and the upside will take care of itself. This principle guided him through market manias and crashes. He always maintained a margin of safety and avoided reckless bets. Buffett's whole career is a testament to value investing, the idea of determining an asset's intrinsic worth and only buying if it's available at a significant discount to that value. He treats stocks as pieces of real businesses, not just tickers. He has also warned against being too influenced by the whims of Mr. Market. Don't focus on short-term swings in price. Focus on the underlying value. And when opportunity arises, be ready to pounce. As he vividly put it, opportunities come infrequently. When it rains gold, put out the bucket, not the thimble. This reflects his strategy of making a few big, concentrated bets when conditions are in his favor, rather than constant trading. Buffett advocates staying within what you know. Never invest in a business you cannot understand, he advises. Both he and Munger have avoided chasing hot tech trends in their early years simply because they didn't feel they grasped them well enough. This discipline kept them out of trouble. Buffett believes risk comes from ignorance, not volatility. As he bluntly said, risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. His success came not from high IQ, but from sticking to his circle of competence and expanding it slowly. Buffett's favorite holding period is, famously, forever. He once joked that when he buys a stock, he imagines the market shutting down and not reopening for 5 years, meaning he only wants to own things he'd be comfortable holding without liquidity. He and Munger emphasize that time is the friend of the great business, compounding its value year after year, but the enemy of the mediocre. This patience is what turned $1 billion in Coca-Cola stock into $10+ billion over decades of holding. He warns that jumping in and out of stocks and trying to time markets usually backfires. One of his metaphors, the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. This golden rule encapsulates Buffett's contrarian streak, the ability to go against the crowd. We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy, and to be greedy only when others are fearful, Buffett says. In practical terms, this means he builds cash reserves when markets are roaring, selling or sitting out if prices are too high, and deploys cash aggressively when there's panic and bargains abound. Examples: stepping in to buy in 1974 when everyone else was despondent, or providing lifelines during 2008's crisis. It takes discipline and emotional fortitude, but Buffett's career proves the merit of this contrarian approach. Despite his wealth, Buffett has always been a stickler for doing business the right way. He often repeats to his managers, "Always guard your reputation. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently." This is not just moralizing. Buffett believes that a great reputation is good business. Berkshire is trusted in deals because of Buffett's honesty. He'd rather lose a profit than cheat or mislead. This high ethical standard attracted many to want to work with or sell their company to Berkshire Hathaway, often at a lower price than they could get elsewhere, simply because they trusted Buffett's handshake. Buffett has shown that you don't need extravagance to be happy. He's the rare billionaire who could be mistaken for a regular middle-class grandfather in his daily life. He values financial prudence. Whether it was personally buying used cars or avoiding debt, he's remarked that credit cards and high-interest debt are one of the biggest downfalls for people trying to build wealth. Live below your means and invest the surplus. That was his own practice. Buffett's frugality isn't because he can't spend. It's because he genuinely finds excess to bring no additional joy. My life would not be happier, and it'd probably be worse if I had 6 or 8 houses or a whole bunch of boats or an airplane, he told an interviewer. He's content with the basics he has, and he jokes that his one guilty pleasure is an occasional premium hamburger. Buffett's famous quote, the most important investment you can make is in yourself, speaks to his belief in lifelong learning. He is a voracious reader. In his early days, he read 600, 750, even 1,000 pages a day of financial documents. He still spends about 5 to 6 hours a day reading at 94. Buffett's takeaway is that knowledge accumulates like compound interest. And he doesn't just mean book smarts. He also emphasizes learning to communicate well, hence the Dale Carnegie course, to manage your emotions, and to develop good personal habits. His and Munger's mantra of going to bed a little smarter each day is a cornerstone of their success. For all his business acumen, Buffett often reflects on the true meaning of success in life. He doesn't consider wealth the scorecard for a life well lived. In fact, one of his most heartfelt quotes is, "Basically, when you get to my age, you'll really measure your success in life by how many of the people you want to have love you actually do love you." This philosophy, likely instilled by his father and strengthened by Susan's influence, shows that Buffett ultimately treasures relationships over riches. He's maintained long, close friendships, some since childhood, is beloved by his family and colleagues, and treats people with kindness. He reminds young people that money has its limits. Beyond ensuring comfort and security, money can't buy health, love, or happiness. Buffett himself still tap dances to work, metaphorically, because he genuinely loves what he does, but he'll also tell you the greatest joy in his life has been the people, his late wife, his children, his friends, and the moments shared with them. Buffett's wisdom is often delivered with a dose of humor. He quips that he's successful in business because he has an inner scorecard. He cares more about being right than looking right to others. He also acknowledges luck, being born in America at the right time with certain talents and finding his calling early. This humility is a lesson in itself. No matter how successful you become, stay grounded. As he likes to say, you can always tell someone to go to hell tomorrow. You don't give up that option, so keep your cool today. He's advocating patience, courtesy, and not burning bridges. In wrapping up the saga of Warren Buffett, we see a man who embodies a rare combination of brilliant intellect, ethical backbone, and compassionate heart. His life story provides inspiration on multiple levels. The kid who hustled and followed his passion, the investor who stuck to his principles and triumphed over the long run, the leader who remained humble and honest, and the philanthropist who decided to use his wealth to help humanity. Buffett often describes himself as wired for capital allocation. It's just who he is. Even in his 90s, he spends hours doing what he loves, reading about businesses and thinking about where to invest next. It's a reminder of another Buffett axiom: find your passion. He famously said, "In the world of business, the people who are most successful are those who are doing what they love." He found what he loved early, and it happened to make him very rich. But it's the pursuit of the game, not the money, that kept him going. As we picture Warren Buffett in his Omaha office, perhaps enjoying a cherry Coke and a box of C's peanut brittle sent by a grateful shareholder, we see that the billions of dollars were never the true goal. They were a byproduct of doing something exceptionally well for a very long time. And now those resources are being directed toward solving some of the world's toughest problems. The Oracle of Omaha has indeed given us oracles, in the form of invaluable lessons on life and investing. His story teaches us that patience, integrity, and generosity never go out of style in business or in life. In Buffett's own words, chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. A caution to cultivate good habits early. And clearly, Buffett's habits of thrift, study, rationality, and fairness formed light chains that guided him to a life of extraordinary accomplishment and goodwill. As we conclude this storytelling journey through Warren Buffett's life, we leave with a treasure trove of wisdom and a shining example of success earned the right way. Whether you aspire to be an investor or just to live well, Buffett's principles serve as a compass. In the end, he shows that nice guys can finish first, and that the real measure of success is doing what you love and doing it with people you love. Few stories embody that truth, as well as the story of Warren Buffett, a life truly well lived with chapters still being written. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the incredible life and timeless wisdom of Warren Buffett, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell, because here at Stories from Legends, we're all about bringing you inspiring stories, powerful lessons from successful individuals, and transformative insights from the greatest books ever written. Drop a comment below. Tell us which part of Buffett's journey resonated most with you, or suggest someone whose story you'd like to see next. Thanks so much for listening. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll catch you in the next video.